It's a cool Tuesday morning. Yes, the final day in the month of September 2025, 31 minutes past 7 a.m. Ayokunmi here, ready to take a look at the stories in the papers, analysis, and contributions from you that make everything absolutely rich. This is Freshly Pressed. Welcome into a Tuesday installment of the show. We're coming to you live from our studios right here in the heart of Victoria Island in the city of Lagos, about 25 degrees out there. Cool morning, like I said, but the weather forecast is telling me that there's a possibility of light rain this morning. So if you are not out there yet, just prepare for that eventuality. Yes, you should. Better safe than sorry, as they say. You know how this works. The stories are lined up, analysis will follow, and of course, your messages, your thoughts, your contributions, they mean the world to us. And you can share them with us on WhatsApp on 0911 That is on WhatsApp. On YouTube, we're streaming live. You can catch the live stream at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Those are the ways you can join us on Freshly Pressed this morning. Once again, my name is Ayokunmi. Joining me to take a look at the stories. Chibuzor is in the studio live and direct. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, everybody listening from wherever we are. We're looking forward to a great day, as great as it can be a day before our is our 65th anniversary as a nation.
Yes, indeed.
I'll leave that to those guys that tell the stories tomorrow.
Well, we'll be here in the studio taking a look at what's in the news and everything. But let's deal with what's in front of us right now in the moment. Talking about what's happening right now. Of course, we can't have a conversation without talking about what's been going on with Pengasan, Dangote, and so on and so forth. Well, updates all around. Let's step into the vanguard to start with, where the National Industrial Court sitting in Abuja on Monday restrained the Petroleum Natural Gas Workers Association of Nigeria, aka Pengasan, from embarking on its planned industrial action against Dangote Petroleum Refinery and petrochemicals. Now, the court, in a ruling that was delivered by Justice Emmanuel Subilim, made the order following an ex parte application that was filed before it by the Dangote Refinery. So, looking at this now, the the National Industrial Court has weighed in on this matter, delivered a ruling, and barring Pengasan from cutting gas supply to the refinery, and this particular order is to last for 7 days. But bearing in mind that we tend to be very flip floppy when it comes to court orders and everything. Number one, is Pengasan actually going to listen to this? Number two, is this going to add a bit more fuel to the fire already brewing on this particular matter?
Okay. When it comes to labor unions, I have very mixed views about their relevance and their importance. Most times they seem to be that thing like appendix that you really don't care that it's there until it becomes painful. Then something happens to you that you now have to remove it. And most times you ask yourself why does it even exist in your body in the first place?
Mm.
But for some people, typically, unfortunately, because of the ways we either enforce laws or laws that are made, for ideally for most workers, they see the labor unions as their last resort to resolve issues that have happened within them and employers, especially when it comes to worker unions. So my view long time about labor unions is that to prevent themselves from being extinct and completely important in all entities, and I use the word completely carefully, that labor unions need to review their positions and review their approach to engagement. And why do I say this? What we see is basically a place where two parties have put themselves in a stalemate, and the government has. I don't know what role the government has played so far. I think it's either the government has chosen to watch on the standby on the sidelines while things play itself out, and obviously because on one side there's a private entity,
Mm.
and on the other side there's an organization that represents workers. But what the labor unions have done is that, see, if nobody's going to listen to us because we're dealing with this private entity, we'll make it everybody else's problem, which is what they've done now. They've made it every other Nigerian's problems because one, they have started by trying to stop supply of gas to materials, so production materials to the
The
Dangote
refinery, yeah.
refinery, and also stop any output coming out of the Dangote refinery from getting to anybody, basically trying to shut them down. And Dangote refinery has obviously they've gone to court and they've gotten an order that says that, hey, you guys can't do any of that. You know, a lot of things have been said about the Pengasans strike action. Have they followed the right steps according to the Nigerian Industrial Court or the laws that guide how labor unions should engage? I think there's supposed to be a 15-day notice, which nobody has come to see that people have questioned if they follow that in the first place. We do know that there was what appeared to be engagements or negotiations with the Dangote refinery prior to this escalation of issues. But what Pengasan has claimed is that the refinery were responsible for escalating because they sacked what they claim to be a chunk of their numbers of their staff who had chosen to unionize. Now, being careful. There's a freedom of association. There are laws that allow for freedom of association within Nigerian law. So, as workers, you can choose to either join unions or not to join unions. From experience, what I found out is that if you look at particular sectors, a lot of people have, and using air quotes, chosen not to join unions. And I use air quotes very carefully, and largely because of the perception that their joining of unions will be frowned upon by their employers, and they would face attacks. And these are not unfounded concerns. These are concerns that were found, that if you look back historically at people who had joined unions, how they had been eased out, or they were first to be eased out when there were needs to make changes in the organizations. And rightly or wrongly, it's how the organizations perceive them. Most times, organizations will perceive unionists as being roadblockers, as being disruptionists, as being not adding value to the organization long term. Which is unfortunate because one of the positive things I see about unions is they're able to galvanize a large number of people to go in a particular direction at a given time. And if you have a positive direction that the entity wants to go in terms of growing up production, getting things done quickly, smartly, it's easiest to, it's almost, there's a no-brainer that the unions are the first people to go to. But unfortunately, over time, this is not just Nigeria, it's all around the world. In the US, you've seen in the US where it was taken over by the mafia and mobsters, and over time, because obviously with great power also there's great responsibility, and what we've seen is that there's abuse of that power by the unions, and also a response by organizations that we don't even want to deal with this mess. So we're back to Nigeria. We've gotten to this stalemate. Pengasan are saying, you know what, you guys don't have any respect for us, you have no regard, and you are targeting our members. Now when they say no, we're not targeting any members. We've had what they claim to be series of attacks to disrupt their operations internally and sabotage. And what they've decided is, after their investigations and actions, they've decided that they want to, they're going to get to the root cause of these guys who are trying to disrupt or sabotage their efforts, their organization, and they've chosen to ease them out of the organization. Pegasus are claiming that all these guys are our members, they form a chunk. Dangote is claiming that, see, these guys are not a small number. So we're going back and forth, and Pengasan decided to play his final card, which is we're going on strike. If we look at the next part of this story, the NLC has now joined to back up Pengasan and say, you know what, we're not just going to allow you to do that, because what Dangote is doing is not just against your members and the industry, but it's against workers in general. So we're also asking all our affiliates that we should also go on strike. Follow up.
Can this be seen as some sort of, in quotes, gang up here? I mean, if all these unions are coming together to say, you know what, we're not going to take this, we're all going to go on strike.
So, like I said, the labor unions play the cards that they have, and in their heads, this is the card they typically have, and they can play. This card is the card that they have that can make the most damage, rightly or wrongly. And that's what we find ourselves. For the average Nigerian, it means that you are now under pressure to sort yourself out. You're back in the days where already, if you go to places like Awolo Road, queues are beginning to build up here in small batches. I think when I was on Sunday when this was announced, I ran into the fuel station to try and fill up my tank, and a large number of people did the same. And I've seen stations when I was driving out today. A lot of stations are shut down.
Mm.
And you're going to see a lot of that. As it goes on every other day, it will become worse. So, what are we looking for as Nigerians? Yes, we can go to the courts, we can get
Injunctions.
injunctions to stop. People can go on strike, but as Nigerians, the average guy who's sitting on the street, all he wants is he wants to be able to move around freely, he wants to get access to supply. So we need to get these parties back on the table and we need them to make concessions so that we can move forward. And I think maybe it's time that the government leaves the sidelines and probably comes in to try and be that middleman and helps them find a middle ground and a solution. Um, Obviously, and this is not discounting all the investments that Dangote has put up, and even the labor unions have their points. But for Nigerians, and speaking as a Nigerian who's outside of that, we don't want a situation where we see these kind of actions because it tends to form the impression that nothing really works in Nigeria. That somebody's going to get you if you try and do some investment in this country.
Mm.
It's not going to be the government or the government parastatals trying to make things hard for you to do something or trying to make it hard for you to take out your money after you bring it in, or you could fall probably to unions who are going to just decide one day to wake up and shut down your business, irrespective of whatever laws or whatever court processes exist or procedures exist. So at the end of the day, we need to be seen as a country that actually respects its own laws and as a people that respect their own laws. Either they are wrong or they are right. So I do hope that the government steps in and tries to mediate through this issue, because this is now a national problem. It's not a Dangote problem or a Pengasan problem.
Mm.
It's a Nigerian problem.
It's a Nigerian problem. You know that popular saying that when two elephants fight, the grass suffers. Well, looking at what you was also mentioned, some fuel stations shut, little pockets of queues forming here and there. And for those who remember the wahala of having to deal with shortages, not something that anyone wants to have to deal with. And it's even made worse, bearing in mind the circumstances surrounding the current situation. It just makes it even more galling when you think about it. So a resolution is something that needs to be found. All right, still talking matters that have to do with the law. Let's take this from the Punch newspaper. And the Federal High Court in Abuja has barred the Professor of Political Economy, Pat Utomi, and his associates from going ahead with their plan to set up a shadow government in Nigeria. Now, delivering judgment in a suit instituted by the Department of State Services on Monday, Justice James Omotosho held that the creation of a shadow government or cabinet is unconstitutional and alien to the country's presidential system of governance.
So I actually wish that we had a lawyer and to speak largely on the legality or the legal framework or of this ruling, right? I recall when the DSS went to court to challenge this, and I do remember having, I don't know, it was on this platform or some other discussion where I felt it was a bit funny that the DSS were the ones that took on this mantle to seek for to go to court on this matter. I would have actually felt that maybe the Minister for Justice would have actually gone on some point. But hey, the DSS has chosen that their mandate in terms of security is broad and wide, and this was under their spaces, which is good in some interpretation. But let's move over from that point. Professor Tommy and some other, I'll use the word loosely now, opposition members or good-minded Nigerians gathered at some point and had a gathering where they said that, what, we want to be able to hold this government to account, and we don't think that they're doing the right thing. And our solution to this is across political lines, that we're going to form what we would refer to as a shadow government. Now, this is not the first time that a group in opposition have made those statements. In fact, if I recall, and I recall at some point, the current government, when they were in opposition, or the current party when they were in opposition, at some point, made the same comment within the presidential system. But it's interesting that how these things evolve over time, depending on
Mm,
what side of the line you're treading on. So what the court has said is that if you look at the presidential system, and for anybody who's done secondary school government would know that shadow governments are characteristics of, I think, the parliamentary system, where you have representatives from the parliament and you have a prime minister, and the opposition would set its own shadow government that sits in parliament, basically to react to the policies of the government in power and
mm.
form as a check and balance. So what the judge has said is basically very technical and very straightforward. That, see, in the presidential system, there is no space for shadow government. Based on the presidential system, I think that's my understanding of what he has said.
Right.
That this is not a characteristic of the type of the government we are doing today. So, this doesn't make any sense. And I've had this argument, I've had this discussion before. I said, if that, and it's based on that process that he's made that statement. But what I would, and that's why I would love a lawyer to be here. If Professor Tommy came tomorrow and said, yes, we agree with the president, we're not going to have a shadow government, we're just going to have a shadow committee from the opposition, just to be able to look at what that want people to specialize and look at each policy, each government position from ministry to ministry, and give us an alternate view.
But do they need to actually have an actual shadow committee in order to be able to do those things?
So what I'm saying, you could call it anything you want. You don't even need to have a committee. What I would say is that, see, I would decide that, you know what, government is large. There are areas of specialization in government. And what do we want to do? I, as the opposition, want to be able to have a plan in place that when I go into government or when I'm going into the election, I want to be able to counter or challenge what the current government is doing. So I can gather 30 something or whatever number of people, ministers we have. I gather my people and say, for each minister we have, I want to have someone who's going to be an alternate, within the opposition to look at what these guys are doing and give an alternate position, or a position that clearly identifies what direction we would like to go as the opposition. Whenever or if we get to power, we can call it whatever it is. So in one case, you see, I think for me, where I'm going boiling down to is that the DSS has gotten a win in challenging this position, and rightly or wrongly so, that's within their own space. And and I'm sure some people are rejoicing here and there, and some people go to the press about this. But in essence, really, what does it really change? The entire idea is that, and I would say anybody who calls themselves a Democrat or who believes in multi-party democracy would be one who would want an effective and efficient opposition to exist, because it allows them to see even their own blind spots and improving, giving value to the people that they serve. But if we don't, it's when we don't and when we don't care for it and we just want power for the sake of wanting power, is when we fight battles like this, in my own opinion. But hey, you know what? I don't have the answers to all the questions, but let's see where the opposition goes next with this. But and for the sake of Nigerians, let's keep moving forward, because really, it's what it is at this point.
It is what it is at this point. What do you think? Let us know your thoughts. Share them with us on WhatsApp on 0911-999-0981. And as I just said that, a couple of messages just dropped right here. Let me take one or two before we get back into the stories. We'll talk briefly on ASU before we talk about insecurity matters. I mean, we already talk about unions, so let's just complete the trifecta, if you can put it that way. Fabian Inekwe says, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Fabian. Regarding the court's prevention of the formation of a shadow government, as well as stopping Pengasan from its strike, stop Pengasan from stopping gas to the refinery, actually. I wish the judicial system would be as swift in sitting and ruling when people take the government to court, such as on the appointment of a military administrator in Rivers State. It was a sole administrator, not a military administrator, Fabian. The present case against the police on tinted glass permits and so on and so forth, and that also is on the menu. I hope we can get to get to that ASAP. This is a bit of a lengthy one. This is Bayo and Yaba. Good morning to you, Bayo. He says ASU is a trade union of university academic staff in Nigeria, but they don't deserve the disturb a number of the private universities and to allow the lecturers to join the union. NURTW is the trade union of road transport workers in Nigeria, but you don't see them go after God is good, Ekerson, and the likes. Even if they are in the transportation business, their drivers don't also join any unions. NUT is a trade union of teachers in primary and secondary school, but you don't see them go after the private private schools and tell the teachers to join as well. But you think it's okay for Dangote to build a refinery, solving all our collective petroleum imports problems, and then allow Pengasan to dictate to him and shut down his refinery whenever they feel like. I think any refinery worker that is not happy at Dangote refinery who needs the union to help him should seek employment somewhere else or take Dangote to court. Enough of this nonsense.
Okay, can I respond to that? I know that even before we went on air, I was giving my personal experience. I work in the private sector, and I do know when, like I said, I'm not a firm supporter of the unions. I have my own issues with them, but I've been in the private sector all my career, and I do know that they actually do go to some of these entities and actually start up for ask start unions. In fact, some instances you have staff of those entities, because typically what I'll tell you for free is that when they go into those entities, they don't go in on their own. Typically, in a lot of instances, the staff who are there actually invite them in.
Mm.
See, we can call it nonsense. I understand what you are saying in terms of Alaji trying to protect his investment and his, what he's put on ground. But as long as you have a law that says that Nigerians can join unions wherever they work or unions can be formed, then there's no line that separates the public or private entities in that law. Last I checked. So you can call it nonsense, but see, if we are going to be a country that lives within the ambience of the law, then everybody should be allowed to follow the law, irrespective of whether the interests are. And if you're not happy with it, you either change the law or you get out of the country.
All right, let's go back to the stories. I'll take more messages as we get along. Keep them coming in on WhatsApp and on YouTube as well. You can leave your comments on YouTube at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Okay, let us talk very quickly about ASU. I mean, like I said, we talked about the unions before. Now, just an update here. This is from the Guardian. ASU, the Academic Staff Union of Universities, they've given the federal government a 14-day ultimatum to address its 7-point demands or to face industrial action. I mean, we're talking about Pengasan, NLC, and Co. on one hand, doctors extending their own ultimatum to the government by 2 weeks or thereabouts. ASU issued a 14-day ultimatum. Now it's just different bodies, different unions, different sectors just wanting to go on strike.
Okay, I don't think there's any much to be said about this. Everybody's gonna queue up with their own bowls. It's like when you go to those gates and you see beggars coming from the rich man's gate at times. Everybody comes with their own bowls, asking for their own part of it. And this is not calling us or any of the unions beggars, but what it is that really everybody is looking for a bigger slice of the cake. Everybody wants a lot more. I would want a lot more in my salary and wages.
Who wouldn't?
I would, if I sit down even from my place of what a lot of people would say as my place of benefit, I will be able to drop a list of things I need to do, and my better wage would satisfy those demands, or better conditions, or various things I would look for. So everybody wants one, and everybody's going to come with with their own demands and their list of demands. So this is not something that is new. ASU and the government have, like most other trade unions, have engaged in this long dance where whenever they come out with this with their strike notices, or even eventually end up going on strike, what happens at some point is that they go to the table, negotiate for a bid, they win some, they lose some. The government makes a play that looks that they have satisfied their needs by promising them something down in the future. They go back to the war for the benefit, in quote, of the Nigerians and Nigerian students or whoever, or Nigerian people. They work for a bit. After taking the first batch of what the government is winning, they realize that government isn't ready to pay up the rest yet. They give them another notice, and it's rinse and repeat. You start again and again
Exactly
and
what I was
again.
going to say,
You
rinse
kick
and repeat.
you kick the ball forward every time. Will we ever get to a point where we actually come to a settlement of this? I don't know. What do we need to get past these issues? I think both sides need to be a bit more realistic about where we are as a country and as a people. Um, ASU will never, and trade unions will never stop picking on government as long as they keep seeing excesses in government spending, as long as they keep seeing politicians or people who are linked to government living the life in their view, and they who, after many years of investment into their intellect, into their whatever,
Mm.
feel that they're being underpaid or feel that the facilities they work with are not good enough to take care of anything. The strike card is what they plead now, even as their first card instead of their last card, which is a shame, but that's where we are. So the only way to get this issue solved long term is where we rebuild trust. Everybody knows that we're on the same boat, and we now have a workable mechanism to actually resolve these issues to the benefit of the system. But do I see that happening anytime soon? No, sir. Let's continue.
Hmm. For how long will we? Let's continue. I don't know. Like you said, even I don't have the answers right now. Let's switch gears swiftly to talk about security issues here in the Daily Trust. Now, Governor Abdullahi Sule of Nasarawa State has charged his counterparts to take full responsibility for security, stressing that the unprecedented resources now available to them leave no room for excuses. Now, he was speaking on Monday at the 2025 Northern Nigeria Investment and Industrialization Summit in Abuja. Now, Sule noted that monthly allocations to the three tiers of government had quadrupled under the reforms of President Bola Tinubu. Now, we've talked severally about the role of the governors in security matters and so on and so forth. Governor Sule charging his counterparts that, hey, you all are getting a lot of money coming in. You need to do better. And we talk about the governors probably not doing enough.
So I do agree with Dr. Governor Sully. I do agree with him that the governors need to do a lot more. Every level of government needs to do a lot more. The local governments need to do a lot more. In terms of how much value of money they are getting now, as in compared to before, um, if you look at the actual value of that money, it's another discussion. We can have another discussion around it, because we've all talked about sitting over the inflation numbers and every other thing. So I do feel that, even though the volumes of numbers I'm collecting today has increased, what I can buy with it is different. But I get his point, and his point is quite clear that the governors need to take responsibility. I do hope that Governor Sule himself is taking responsibility for things within the state, and we're not just talking about security. We're talking about the life, because I think one of the challenges I have with when people come out and make these comments is that I always what something tells me that in the back of my mind I always feel, oh, these are political vibes.
Mm.
But to be able to prove that they are not to the average man who's walking on the street, and for everybody to believe and be able to now look back and say, I'm going to hold my own governor accountable. If they look at the likes of Governor Sule, who is making comments like this, and look at their state and see, Nasarawa State is wonderfully well, and the governor is doing great stuff with the money. Then the next thing is that the guys who are joining Nasarawa State, the guy in Benue State, for instance, asking his governor, why are you not doing enough? If your neighbor in Nasarawa is able to do so much with what he's getting now, what are you doing where you have your food and your whatever, all your resources that you have your part in addition with the money that you're getting from, this guy? So those are the questions that we'll start asking ourselves as people, and we need to start asking our governors. So I do agree with him that the pressure should also be on the governors. Pressure should be on the, on the local government chairman. Enough with governors flying from their various state capitals to come to Abuja to wave when the president is going on holiday or when the presidents are arriving. There is work to be done in each of the states, and we are not seeing enough of that work being done in reality.
Not enough is being done. And you're talking about governors, the number of them, I don't know, it seems they govern from
Yeah,
Abuja. I don't
the
know.
closer you are to power, the better the more visibility you get.
Let me take the messages as we wrap up this morning. Ajayi Olonilua in Magudu Jerry Sherry is sending this in. Good morning to you, Ajayi. He says it's absolutely clear that Pengastan, that has been collecting salaries for doing nothing at NPCL for so many years, is not prepared for what has hit them as a result of Dangote Refinery coming on board. Pengasan, Nupeng, and their collaborators in Itman and Dapman must not be allowed to return us to the dark days of fuel scarcity and fuel queues to cripple the economy. All right. Joseph Menier in Silver State, Ijibu says, good morning to you, Joseph. Great to have you as always. It's unfortunate that one of the cabal fashioned against Nigerians is Pengasan, NLC, and Ipman. And really, these really criminals, I don't think so. These individuals didn't say anything wrong in government sinking billions of dollars into the state refineries, yet they couldn't produce a drop of petrol. Yet workers at these refineries are paid duly, just like the moribund Ajaokuta steel mill is paying imaginary workers till date. These unions don't see anything wrong, but are battling with Dangote, who is running a private refinery. Government, wake up. We can't have it anymore. Okay, this is Emoji from Apapa who says, follow up from yesterday. I work with a private multinational company and belong to the Maritime Union. I know how this union has helped to ensure that my rights as a worker are protected. My wife was a banker and didn't belong to any union. I know how the bank engaged in anti-worker rights activities, and there was no one to fight for them. Imagine sending a staff a query for not replying an email during the weekend when an official phone was not provided and no data was provided as well. Such cannot happen in a unionized environment. I ask again, what is Dangote afraid of? Staff of Total, Shell, Ajip, etc. all belong to Pengasan. All right, thank you, Moji, for sharing that message. Kenny says, Nigerians are at the mercy of the Niger elite. We don't even know whether we're running a capitalist economy. It's like our government is in control of aspects of the economy while the business elites are in control of others. The basic economics we have the knowledge of is not working in Nigeria. Both government and the business elites are just tossing Nigerians up and down. May God have mercy on the Nigerian masses. Thank you for sharing your message. Thank you for all the messages. Trying hard not to crack up in the studio yet. It was just a couple of words to wrap it up for us this morning.
I think Nigerians should. All, it's easy to take one side against the other, especially when we feel that side is what is paying us at that time. But there are broader arguments there are broader views to some of those points. I think once we understand that, and I always tell people, especially now that we are going towards our 65th year as a country, that we need to ask ourselves, what do we really want as a country? What is our vision of the country that we want to see in the next 10 years? Unfortunately, no government has told that to us yet. Everybody looks for quick wins in the 4-year or 8-year election cycles that we see now. But what Nigerians need to see is the vision of the country that we want to have in terms of everything, plus the rights of the individual to everything that we want. And once we get to that point, I think all Nigerians will steer the boat in the right direction. Till then, happy anniversary to Nigerians tomorrow. Let's hope that we can all move around freely and we have fuel to fuel our cars and buses to take us to our destinations. Take care.
All right, thank you so much for those words of wisdom, Chibuzor. Very much appreciated. Having fuel in your car tomorrow and even beyond, that is a very, very serious prayer point. Thank you all so much for being a part of the show and keeping it tuned to Freshly Pressed, as always, here on Smooth 98.1. Always a pleasure getting your messages and, of course, engaging with you as well. Keep it tuned. The show definitely will continue. Well, the Smooth Breakfast will continue. 8:15. We're taking a walk into the grapevine, holding hands and talking about everything that has to do with the entertainment space. Don't go anywhere. Keep it tuned.
Interface.